last week we looked at what was going on in Europe and why the performances of Europeans were so up and down. If you want to check that out, check out the link in the corner of your screen right now. For this week, we're going to go into the solution to the problem that is plaguing Europe. So stay tuned, enjoy the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.
I think, personally, if Europe starts like actually trying to be consistent instead of trying to find a win, that will be the big thing. So that's what I think is the core problem, is that like Europeans prefer to be high risk, high reward because that might get them wins sometimes, which is way more gratifying, than consistently climb, which gets them wins eventually, which is like a lot more of a matter of discipline, right? So I think that's the main thing in Europe. Now, there's differences in countries, right? So like, for example, I'll use the Netherlands as an example again because I'm from the Netherlands. Like, Dutch players generally are a lot more methodical about playing the game. That's what I've noticed. If I compare it to, for example, even Germany, but also the UK in Smash Ultimate, it's a lot more based on feeling and on basically what I want to do. So people don't really play the two-player game as much. However, that said, the players who do are like really, really good. So that's kind of the thing about Europe, right? So this is another thing you kind of got to keep in mind. So say that we have like the player base here, right? So this is 100% of the player base. And let's say the top is like 1%, right? And then high level is like, let's say 10. And then like mid level is, I don't know, 50. And then the rest is low level, right? So this is like low. This is mid, this is high, this is top. If you look at this, these kind of ratios, then for the US, like top 1% top players means like, I don't know, like let's say 20 top players. For Europe, that means like maybe one. You know what I mean? That's kind of the thing. So in that sense, Europe is just like straight up weaker. I will never deny that. I think Europe is straight up weaker. But I also think if you compare how easy it is for Americans to get higher level because there's more people to push them, it's also very understandable. So if you take someone that's like high level on like a global skill, let's say S1, right? I'm going to use S1 because I know he's done it before. And you give him the experience that he needs, right? So the main difference for him is experience. Then he would be top level, right? So that's kind of also something you got to think about. It's like, what, again, that's why I talked about this. What are the things that are separating people? So we can talk about knowledge, and that being like a big thing for a lot of European countries. But for the people who have the knowledge, right? So let's say Gluto, let's say S1, let's say Meru. What is the biggest difference between players like them and a top level player from the US? And I think at that point, you're looking at two things. So one, a good character, and two, good experience and environment. So I think mentality is very personal, right? So it's always harder to compete in the US if you're from Europe because there's a lot online. But I think this differs so greatly from players. I cannot really attribute it. This is like a European thing, personally. I personally don't think it's a European thing. I think the bigger point is obviously the experience and the environment. So in terms of experience, is basically what we talked about, right? It's mostly matchups, which Europeans are just lacking in. Like, if you look at Smash World Tour, right? Let's take a look at what matchups the Europeans lost to. So Sintro, losing to Cola, doesn't have good or Roy experience. Lose to Shuton, doesn't have good Olimar experience. Lose to Kobe, doesn't have good Young Link experience either. I mean, you can play Wi-Fi with Super Semi, fair, you know, but it's still going to be different. And then against Wolf, he actually wins. Wolf, very common character. How do you go into match if you don't have information on the matchup? It's hard. We can talk about that in a bit. But that's kind of the thing, right? Tom Barry too. I don't know about Tom Barry's experience though, because as far as I know, he mostly plays online. Anyway, you can see that Sintro, like the set he won was a matchup that he knows. I assume basically everyone knows Wolf. Pally actually did best against MK Leo. I think he was playing Aegis. And that's a matchup that he knows, right? Jay Dizzle, again, Young Link. I don't know about Rob. I'm actually surprised he lost against Rob. So, like, again, you can see he played better. He also played well against Anathema. I agree. He plays well against Anathema. So, like, again, experience is, like, a huge factor in how well they perform. That's fair enough. So, that's another thing, right? So, like, you can talk about, like, practicing a matchup online. But, like, Europeans offline don't really grind. Like, when I was at SmashCon, we literally had, like, on pools days, they literally had setups where, like, Samsora would sit down and just play money matches for like 6 hours, make mad money, and get a lot of matchup experience. Because here's the thing, right? You're at a US major, there's 1,000 players there, right? A lot more than an EU major. And then the best Sonic from Oklahoma rolls up and wants to money match you because they feel like they're big shit, right? They're, you know, big fish in a small pond, and then you body them. But it's still a really good experience because, you know, one of the better Sonics, right? And then you do that for like hours straight, you get a shit ton of matchup experience. It's just a constantly revolving door. And that's kind of the thing, Adam, is like, if I played money matches in Smash Con. I played against Imsora, I played against Darkshed, I played against Popo, I think, Pow, the Sonic. I played a couple more. But from what I remember is like just playing once. I played against MVD too. Just playing once helps me a lot with understanding the matchup, right? Because you have like one set, you're trying to get the most out of that set, and you're gonna retain a lot of information, and then it can like they can continue doing something that's more productive for them, and I can use that information to improve for next time. It was actually a very nice arrangement. But yeah, like in Europe, not a lot of people play friendlies. I wondered how were the friendlies. So like, I didn't actually get to play too many, if I remember correctly. Glutny losing to Falco and Jigglypuff, need I say more? And then Taric. I mean, honestly, I don't know about Taric's matchup experience because again, he plays mostly online, and I think he did pretty well, honestly, especially against Meister. But for Taric, a lot was the composure, and I feel like Taric too. Like Taric looks for what he wants. Like when you're at 80, he starts looking for down tilt. A lot of players in Europe, they look for things that they want instead of finding it, right? And that's kind of where I feel like conditioning could be like a factor in improving, because instead of like looking for what you want, you should be conditioning your opponent and then like using that conditioning to get what you want. But at the same time, it's kind of like it's hard to condition your opponent if they don't know what's like, if they're mostly doing what they want to do themselves, right? So then we kind of get to the point of awareness again, or game plan, I'm sorry, and it kind of goes full circle. So I think the point of what I'm trying to say is like a lot of Europeans are just held back by having very little game knowledge, and those that do cannot even break through because they just don't have the experience or environment. Like when I said this on Twitter as well, but when I went to the US, I played like for like 45 minutes versus Wadi, and it helped me like level up like twice. Just from playing against like a top level player for that little bit of time. And that's kind of like the trickle down thing again, right? And we don't have that in Europe. So if you're like high level in Europe, well, for one, you kind of have the knowledge barrier, and two, you don't have anyone to push you very much further into the top level. Especially like even if it's like Glutny, like if you look at France, like a lot of people in France, they when they lose to Glutny, it's kind of something to be expected, sort of to be expected. And I feel like instead of like revisiting what they're doing on a fundamental level, they kind of like keep working at what they're doing, and then they play against Glutny at like 30 locals, and then they win a one, and then they're like, oh, I got that win on Glutny, I'm on the right track, right? So we kind of go back to the consistency versus growth again. They don't have the game plan or discipline to just like do what you need to win. They instead just go by feel, and they're like, I'm just gonna apply you, or you know, like I know down tilt is gonna down tilt is gonna kill you here, so I'll look for a down tilt instead of just like playing your normal game. And if you hit the down tilt, cool, and if you don't hit the down tilt, also cool. I'll just bring you to like 20% further, and then I'll kill you from there. And I think like if a lot of Europeans would do well to just like start like actually working on a game plan. So ideally, if you want to grow, and like for Europe especially now, ideally if you want to grow, you start out with like a strong game plan. Right? It's going to be a very simple game plan, okay? And then from there, you're going to move into a phase where... Let me sit down. So you're going to move into a phase where you start basically adding detail to your game plan, right? So you're going to add detail. So the detail is going to be what we talked about, like niche solutions, right? Then you're going to get better at like changing situations. Then you get better at all the player versus player stuff, which is like the, you know, adaptation, conditioning, mix-ups, stuff like that. And like your mix-ups from the beginning, like your mix-ups are part of your game plan, right? In the sense that you like your game plan should include how you mix up. So for example, like as this character, my main mix-up is dash attack and dash grab. because their spot dodge cancels are ass. But against this character, my main mix-up is like landing aerials, because, right? So like your mix-up should be part of your game plan, right? Like we said before, like your game plan is like, you know, has like all these branches that branch even further, blah 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 blah, right? So these are your mix-ups, right? So what Europe does is they're basically like, okay, we're just gonna do this. And if you can just add this, then we'll be golden, because we're really we're pretty damn solid at doing this. And then if you look at, like, for example, Siski does well because he has a game plan, he has detail, and I feel like for Siski, like, the next step would be to like get better and like change the situation a little bit more actively. But Samus generally doesn't need to, because her neutral is so strong. She generally doesn't need to change situations, right? But I think that could be like a good next step, and that's what Quick is really good at doing, right? So if you look at Quick is good at all of these. But I feel like his game plan, like, because he's focused so much on like these steps, like steps 2, 3, 4, his first step is kind of like, you know, that's kind of fallen to the wayside a little bit. Can you hit an example of changing situations? Right, so for example, say that I'm Shulk and I don't like being next to someone. Instead of, you know, trying to do like down air or nair or shield or parry or roll, I just get away. So instead of engaging in a situation that's bad, I just leave the situation. Another minus 20 viewers. Yeah. So that's like a good way to change situations. Something for Joker is like dash up, see what they do, and if they spot dodge, you punish, and if they don't, you just dash back out again. You change the situation instead of engaging, because you know it's not as ideal as it could be. It means charge shot. That's true. So like just going through this is like really important. It's just that this is like a whole set of like things that you need to do, you know, like your adaptations, right? So adapting adapting is kind of like changing your game plan on the fly, because I feel like adaptation is a little bit like it's very close to mix-ups, right? Because like when you're mixing someone up, you're basically reacting to what they're doing and you're picking a different option. Which should be part of your game plan. I think adaptation is more about like, okay, they're doing something that I'm not ready for, how am I going to change it, which is a lot harder, because you're basically taking something from a first player, and you're kind of like changing your game plan on the fly. Very hard to do. But also like conditioning, right? So conditioning can be part of your game plan as well, but it's a little bit different because like different players react differently to conditioning. So conditioning is all about like understanding what your opponent's going to do, right? And then like this actually goes further and further and further. So another thing about PvP is kind of like there's a lot of mental game to PvP, because like when you have a read, do you trust it? If you're at like 180, do you dare to throw out the grab in the last moment, even though like knowing it's part of your game plan, knowing it's part of your details, knowing it's part like better than changing situations, knowing you have the read, do you still go for the grab, right? But yeah, I think this is mostly like this is mostly like method. This is like theory, and that's where Europe lags behind, because we don't talk to each other enough. We really don't. But that's partially because like most countries don't have like a focus on theory at all. It's very much missing in Europe. I feel like in the US, it's not like a big focus either, but like people look for it a little bit more naturally, like a game plan. Can be something like conditioning, adaptation, and awareness. It's like changing a situation is all about awareness, right? So this is like refresh rate, like understanding a situation and like knowing if you should change it or engage in it. Niche counterplay always feels weird to me, because it always seems like the counterplay to the niche counterplay can be done in a lot of different ways. So by the time I plan things out to layer 2 or 3, a concrete plan kind of falls apart. Yeah, that's why if you go for like the niche counterplay should be for niche answers. So if someone does the usual stuff, you don't need niche counterplay, unless it's something that's like a hard read, right? So like for example, they always jump. Normally I catch jumps with like a rising aerials, but if I hard read, I can run up smash it. So that's like a very it says detail. I'm sorry, this is my my horrible handwriting. I lost my train of thought. 1 second. I know. We talked about right niche counterplay. So you can run up smash. And that's kind of like when you go for like niche counterplay, you kind of like do it once, and then you kind of like sit back and you kind of reevaluate if it's still viable. Because if someone gets their jump read by like an up smash or something, or like their solid option gets called out specifically in like a niche way, then that's gonna call attention to it, and you gotta like reevaluate, like, can I still do this, right? So that's niche options should never be the basis of your gameplay at all. What would you put in a change of situations tab? Well, change of situations is a lot. It's like a lot of knowledge. It's a lot of your game plan. It's a lot of knowing what you gotta do. It's basically like if you know the situation, you know whether you should engage in it or leave. Do you mean detail? It's beyond layer 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we'll do this.